A woman notices the one who never tries to control because his presence feels like freedom, not pressure. His calm energy, emotional maturity, and respect for her boundaries create trust. He doesn't cling or demand. He offers peace. And peace, felt, not forced, is what the feminine heart moves toward. Freedom creates safety because the feminine heart blooms only in spaces where it can breathe without fear of being judged, corrected, or controlled. When a woman feels free, she feels seen, not for what someone wants her to be, but for who she already is. This kind of freedom is not passive, it's intentional. It's the quiet confidence of someone who trusts the natural rhythm of connection instead of trying to force it. And that trust becomes the very thing that makes a woman feel emotionally secure. Control always carries the scent of fear, fear of losing, fear of not being enough, fear of uncertainty. Freedom carries the energy of trust. Trust says, I don't need to lock you in to feel valued. Control says, I am not safe unless you behave a certain way. Women instantly feel the difference. One creates pressure, the other creates peace. When she feels free, she can soften. She can express her emotions without walking on eggshells. She can speak honestly without worrying that honesty will trigger anger, jealousy, or insecurity. Freedom gives her permission to show her full self, not just the curated version she thinks will be accepted. And when she doesn't have to shrink or hide, she naturally forms a deeper connection. Freedom also creates safety because it reflects emotional maturity. It shows that the person she's interacting with is grounded enough in themselves to allow space for her individuality. Emotional immaturity tries to control because it misinterprets independence as rejection. Emotional maturity embraces independence because it understands that love is chosen, not enforced. A woman feels deeply safe with someone who doesn't need to restrict her to feel secure. That safety turns into trust, and trust becomes attraction. In this kind of environment, she doesn't feel monitored. She feels respected. Respect is one of the highest forms of emotional safety for a woman. It tells her, your choices are your own. Your thoughts matter. Your boundaries matter. When she senses this respect, she relaxes into the connection instead of resisting it. She becomes more affectionate, more loyal, and more open, not because she's expected to be, but because she feels safe enough to be. Freedom eliminates the silent battles that ruin relationships, the need to justify, defend, or negotiate basic personal choices. It removes the unspoken tension of constantly being questioned or doubted. When a woman doesn't feel controlled, she doesn't feel the instinct to rebel, withdraw, or detach. Instead, she feels the desire to move closer. Most importantly, freedom creates emotional safety because it aligns with her natural psychology. A woman's intuition sharpens in environments where she feels pressured, restricted, or controlled. She becomes guarded. But in the presence of freedom, her intuition softens. She senses no hidden agenda, no manipulation, no demand. And that softness is where true connection grows. Freedom isn't the absence of care, it's the presence of trust. It is the foundation upon which emotional intimacy is built. And for a woman, intimacy without freedom never feels safe. Freedom is the air her heart breathes, the space her soul expands into, and the quiet signal that says, here, you are safe. Self-mastery is more attractive than dominance because real strength has never been measured by how much control someone has over another, but by how much control they have over themselves. Women naturally sense the difference. Dominance feels heavy, like pressure, like force, like someone trying to impose their will. Self-mastery feels grounded. like emotional clarity, like calm presence, like someone who understands themselves well enough that they don't need to overpower anyone else. A woman doesn't gravitate toward dominance. She gravitates toward stability. Stability is born from self-mastery. It shows in the way someone responds instead of reacts. It appears in how they handle challenges without exploding, withdrawing, or trying to manipulate outcomes. It's the energy of someone who is centered in their purpose and doesn't let emotions run wild. That emotional discipline becomes deeply attractive because it makes her feel secure, not intimidated. Dominance usually comes from insecurity, an attempt to mask fear by taking control. But insecurity, no matter how well disguised, is always felt. It creates chaos in the connection, making a woman feel like she must constantly manage emotions that aren't hers. Self-mastery removes that burden. It communicates, my emotions are my responsibility. You don't have to shrink or tiptoe to keep me balanced. That alone makes her relax. Self-mastery is also attractive because it reveals someone who chooses self-respect over ego. They don't need to win every argument. They don't turn disagreements into battles of superiority. They don't weaponize silence, withdraw affection, or use dominance as leverage. Instead, they handle conflict with clarity, patience, and emotional control. That is what earns respect, not dominance. A woman notices when she is around someone who can regulate their own emotions. She feels it when conversations don't escalate unnecessarily. She feels it when her vulnerability is met with presence instead of defensiveness. She feels it when her independence isn't seen as a threat, but as a natural part of who she is. That emotional spaciousness comes from self-mastery, not dominance. Self-mastery also signals emotional intelligence. It reveals someone who understands their triggers, who can sit with discomfort, who doesn't turn pain into punishment. Dominance tries to overpower discomfort by controlling the external world. Self-mastery transforms discomfort by looking inward. And that level of awareness is something a woman deeply respects. People who practice self-mastery don't need to impress or intimidate to feel valuable. Their confidence is quiet. Their presence is steady. Their strength feels safe, not suffocating. They don't demand admiration. They earn it. They don't force compliance. They inspire respect. That difference is felt immediately and remembered deeply. A woman is far more drawn to someone who leads themselves well than someone who tries to lead her through control. Leadership of the self is irresistible because it shows responsibility, maturity, and integrity. Dominance tries to take power. Self-mastery naturally radiates it. And ultimately, self-mastery becomes attractive because it creates harmony, not hierarchy. It allows connection to grow without fear. It creates an emotional environment where both people can stand strong without one needing to overshadow the other. It is quiet strength, steady, grounded, deeply magnetic. Security without possession is one of the most powerful emotional experiences a woman can feel because it offers safety without suffocation. It is the rare balance of being cared for without being controlled, valued without being owned, supported without being restricted. Women notice instantly when security comes from genuine presence rather than territorial behavior. Possessiveness may disguise itself as love, but it carries an undercurrent of fear of loss, fear of inadequacy, fear of not being enough. True security comes from confidence, not fear, and the difference is felt in every interaction. When a woman feels secure without feeling possessed, she experiences love in its purest form, not a cage, but a home. She feels safe enough to be authentic, expressive, creative, feminine. She doesn't have to monitor her words or justify her actions. She doesn't feel someone watching her movements through the lens of jealousy or suspicion. Instead, she feels trusted. And trust is what allows her to soften, open up, and invest emotionally. Possession tries to control the connection by limiting her freedom. Security strengthens the connection by respecting her freedom. This respect becomes the foundation upon which deep intimacy grows. A woman's heart cannot bloom in captivity. It only blooms in safety. And safety is created through emotional steadiness, not restrictive behavior. Security without possession also communicates emotional maturity. It shows someone who understands that love is not a contract of ownership, but a living, breathing choice made every day. It reveals someone who knows that closeness cannot be forced, monitored, or demanded. It must be earned through consistency and trust. Possession reveals insecurity. Security reveals self-worth, and self-worth is inherently attractive. In an environment of real security, a woman feels seen as an individual, not as an object to be controlled. She feels that her independence is respected, her space is honored, and her boundaries are understood. She doesn't feel the weight of constant questions, accusations, or attempts to limit her world. Instead, she feels a presence that stands beside her, not over her. That presence feels like protection, not imprisonment. Another reason security without possession is so powerful is because it aligns with the natural flow of connection. Healthy relationships thrive on voluntary closeness, not forced compliance. When someone doesn't try to own her, she feels more drawn to them. When someone doesn't restrict her, she naturally gives more of herself. When someone doesn't attempt to control her, she willingly chooses the connection. It's a paradox. Freedom deepens commitment, while possession destroys it. This kind of security is deeply grounding for a woman. It quiets her fears, settles her mind, and opens her heart. It allows her to invest without anxiety, love without hesitation, and trust without constantly looking for hidden intentions. She feels emotionally safe because she knows she is valued, not controlled. She knows she is appreciated, not owned. She knows she is loved, not limited. In the end, security without possession is the environment where the feminine truly thrives, a space where love is steady, freedom is honored, and connection grows through trust rather than control. It is the kind of safety that doesn't cage her, it frees her. Confidence without force is the kind of strength that calms a woman rather than overwhelms her. It's the quiet certainty that comes from inner stability, not from the need to dominate or prove superiority. This kind of confidence doesn't shout, demand, or pressure. It simply exists, steady, grounded, and undeniable. Women instantly feel the difference between someone who is genuinely confident and someone who is trying to project confidence through force. One feels like presence, the other feels like pressure. When confidence is real, it doesn't need to control the environment or the people in it. It doesn't need to win every conversation or assert authority to feel powerful. It shows up in the way someone listens with intention, speaks with clarity, and behaves with emotional balance. This softness wrapped in strength is what the feminine energy responds to, because confidence without force creates an atmosphere of safety, not tension. Force, on the other hand, reveals insecurity. It's an attempt to gain respect by demanding it rather than earning it. It tries to influence through intimidation instead of inspiration. But women don't feel drawn to dominance disguised as confidence. They feel unsettled by it. When someone tries too hard to appear strong, it exposes the very weakness they're trying to hide. Confidence without force is attractive because it doesn't resist reality. It flows with it. It allows conversations to develop naturally instead of steering them aggressively. It gives space for emotions instead of shutting them down. It takes responsibility instead of shifting blame. Women notice this emotional maturity because it makes them feel like they can express themselves without fear of being dismissed or overpowered. This kind of confidence also enhances trust. A woman feels safe knowing she is not in the presence of someone who reacts impulsively, escalates conflict, or tries to silence her voice. She feels valued when her opinions are heard, her boundaries respected, and her individuality honored. Confidence without force supports her autonomy rather than competing with it. Another powerful aspect of this energy is that it doesn't seek validation from others. Someone who is truly confident doesn't need to prove their worth by controlling situations or outshining others. Their worth comes from self-awareness, purpose, and emotional depth. Women recognize this instantly because it allows them to relax. They don't feel like they are managing someone's ego. They feel like they are connecting with someone who is whole. Confidence without force communicates security. It says, I know who I am, and I don't need to dominate to show it. This creates emotional stability, which is incredibly attractive to the feminine heart. Emotional steadiness is far more powerful than external bravado. It shows up in calm reactions, thoughtful decisions, and the ability to remain composed during challenges. Most importantly, confidence without force creates harmony. It allows connection to develop naturally rather than through pressure. It invites closeness instead of demanding it. It opens space for emotional intimacy instead of closing it with fear or control. Women gravitate toward this energy because it feels safe, mature, and deeply respectful. True confidence is gentle, but unshakable. It doesn't overpower. It empowers. It doesn't demand attention. It naturally draws it. And it doesn't force connection. It becomes the quiet strength that a woman trusts, respects, and feels magnetized toward. Respecting boundaries is one of the highest forms of emotional intelligence, and women instinctively recognize its power. Boundaries aren't walls meant to keep people out. They're guidelines that help relationships stay healthy, balanced, and respectful. When someone honors a woman's boundaries, they show that they see her as a whole person with her own needs, values, and individuality. This creates a sense of safety that cannot be replicated through control or constant closeness. When boundaries are respected, a woman feels that her voice matters. She feels heard when she says she needs time, space, or clarity. There is no guilt tripping, no pressure, and no attempts to change her mind through emotional manipulation. Instead, she experiences understanding. Understanding is what allows her to stay open because she isn't forced into anything. She moves closer naturally, not out of fear or obligation. Respecting boundaries also shows emotional maturity. It communicates the ability to handle one's own discomfort without demanding that she sacrifice her emotional well-being. Someone who respects boundaries doesn't panic when she needs space. They don't take it personally when she sets limits. They don't interpret her independence as a threat. Instead, they see boundaries as a sign of emotional health. This perspective creates a stable foundation where trust can grow effortlessly. A woman also feels valued in the presence of someone who respects her limits. It shows her that she isn't being rushed, pushed, or cornered into decisions. She is allowed to move at her own pace, which is crucial for genuine connection. Boundaries create room for authenticity. When she doesn't feel pressured, she becomes more open, more affectionate, more emotionally available because she knows she's safe. Respect for boundaries also keeps the relationship free of power struggles. Instead of trying to control her, someone who honors her space shows that they can regulate their own emotions. They don't react with anger when things don't go their way. They don't insist on having constant access to her time or attention. They understand that closeness develops through trust, not force. This emotional discipline is incredibly attractive because it signals strength without aggression. When boundaries are dismissed, the feminine instinct immediately senses danger. She becomes guarded, she withdraws, she becomes hyper-aware of manipulation or pressure. But when boundaries are honored, her nervous system relaxes, her heart opens. She feels safe letting someone into deeper emotional territory because she knows her autonomy won't be compromised. Respecting boundaries also supports long-term connection. It ensures that both people maintain their sense of self within the relationship. When a woman sees that someone can love her without consuming her, she feels secure. When she knows her choices are respected, she feels empowered. This balance allows the relationship to grow without becoming suffocating. Most importantly, respecting boundaries shows that the connection is based on mutual respect rather than control. It reassures her that she is valued not for what she can provide, but for who she is. And when she feels valued, she gives more naturally love, trust, loyalty, and intimacy. Respecting boundaries is not distance. It is dignity. It is the emotional wisdom of knowing that healthy love honors individuality and that true closeness thrives not when boundaries are violated, but when they are understood and respected. Emotional maturity increases attraction because it creates a kind of stability that the feminine heart instinctively trusts. Emotional maturity is not about being perfect or always composed. It's about being aware, grounded, and intentional with one's emotions. It's the ability to respond instead of react, to communicate instead of explode, and to listen instead of shutting down. Women feel deeply drawn to this energy because it creates an environment where connection can grow without chaos. When someone is emotionally mature, their presence feels safe. Not safe in a dull or predictable way, but in a comforting and dependable way. A woman can express her thoughts without worrying that she will trigger anger or insecurity. She can share her fears without feeling judged. She can disagree without anticipating a fight. Emotional maturity turns vulnerability into an opportunity for closeness instead of a battlefield. That shift alone makes a woman feel more open, more trusting, and more attracted. Emotional maturity also shows in the way someone handles conflict. Instead of using blame, guilt, or manipulation, a mature person approaches challenges with clarity and calmness. They don't try to win every argument. They try to understand. They don't weaponize silence or withdraw affection to punish. They communicate directly and respectfully. This emotional steadiness is incredibly attractive because it shows strength without aggression and leadership without dominance. Another reason emotional maturity increases attraction is because it reflects inner security. People who are comfortable with themselves don't cling, chase, or control. They don't need constant validation to feel valuable. This energy of self-assurance gives a woman the space to be herself without feeling suffocated. She doesn't carry the emotional burden of managing someone else's insecurities. Instead, she gets to experience a connection where both individuals stand strong, whole, and balanced. Emotional maturity also shows through accountability. Someone who is emotionally mature takes responsibility for their actions without deflecting or making excuses. They apologize sincerely when needed and follow through with change, not performative promises. A woman notices this immediately because accountability signals integrity. Integrity is magnetic. It shows reliability, honesty, and depth. Additionally, emotional maturity enhances attraction because it nurtures emotional intimacy. When someone has the capacity to understand feelings rather than avoid them, they create a deeper level of connection. They don't shut down when emotions get intense. They don't run when things get difficult. Instead, they stay present, patient, and compassionate. This kind of emotional availability feels rare, and rarity is always attractive. Emotional maturity also prevents unnecessary drama. A woman feels peaceful rather than anxious. She doesn't have to guess what someone is feeling or interpret mixed signals. Communication is clear and intentions are transparent. Peace is one of the most attractive energies because it allows connection to flourish without emotional turbulence. Emotional maturity increases attraction because it reflects the highest form of strength over oneself. It shows that the person is not driven by impulse or insecurity, but by intention and awareness. This creates a love that is steady, deep, and real. A woman is naturally drawn to this energy because it promises not just excitement, but emotional safety, partnership, and long-term stability. Emotional maturity makes connection feel like a sanctuary rather than a struggle, and that is what the feminine heart finds irresistible. Non-attachment signals high value because it reflects a level of emotional strength, self-worth, and inner stability that cannot be faked. When someone is not clinging, not chasing, and not desperately holding on, it shows that their sense of identity doesn't depend on another person's actions. This creates an energy of quiet confidence, and that confidence is instantly magnetic. Women feel drawn to it because non-attachment doesn't mean disinterest. It means emotional independence. It means connection is a choice, not a need. Non-attachment removes pressure. When someone isn't gripping tightly, a woman feels she can breathe. She doesn't feel examined, judged, or controlled. She doesn't feel the weight of someone's expectations hanging over every interaction. Instead, she feels free to show up as herself. And ironically, that freedom pulls her closer. The harder someone tries to hold on, the quicker the feminine instinct pulls away. But when someone stands strong without clinging, she moves toward that stability naturally. This kind of energy communicates emotional maturity. It says, I choose connection, but I don't depend on it to feel whole. This independence is deeply attractive because it assures a woman that the connection is genuine, not driven by loneliness, fear, or insecurity. Non-attachment shows that someone is capable of being alone without falling apart, and that self-sufficiency commands respect. It signals a life filled with purpose, passion, and inner grounding. Women feel safe around individuals who have their own center. Non-attachment also eliminates neediness, which is one of the biggest repellents in a relationship. Neediness isn't about wanting someone, it's about depending on them for emotional survival. It creates a dynamic where one person becomes responsible for the other's sense of worth. That dynamic drains the connection. But someone who practices non-attachment doesn't outsource their value. They bring confidence, not desperation. They bring presence, not pressure. Another reason non-attachment is so attractive is because it amplifies self-respect. It communicates that someone will not chase what isn't meant for them or force what isn't flowing. They don't cling to someone who pulls away. They don't beg for attention or fear losing what isn't aligned. This self-respect is powerful because it shows strength, dignity, and emotional intelligence. A woman instinctively trusts someone who has the courage to let go rather than manipulate. Non-attachment also makes the connection feel more balanced. When someone isn't trying to control or possess, they leave space for genuine chemistry to grow. They show up fully, but they don't overwhelm. They connect deeply, but they don't control. This equilibrium creates what women crave most: emotional safety. Through non-attachment, actions become authentic, not strategic. Affection is given freely, not as a bargain. Respect flows naturally, not as a way to secure approval. This authenticity is rare, and rarity is inherently attractive. A woman feels that the connection is based on mutual desire, not emotional dependency. Non-attachment signals high value because it shows that someone knows their worth. They don't chase validation. They don't fear loss. They don't cling to what isn't choosing them. This level of self-possession is powerful, peaceful, and deeply attractive. It creates a connection where love is chosen freely, where energy flows naturally, and where the feminine heart feels drawn not by force, but by the quiet strength of someone who stands whole on their own. Peace is the ultimate attraction because it offers something rare, something the feminine heart craves but seldom finds, a presence that doesn't drain, overwhelm, or destabilize her spirit. Peace isn't passive. It's powerful. It's a quiet, steady energy that tells a woman she is safe, not because someone is controlling the situation, but because they are in control of themselves. Peace feels like emotional grounding, like a steady heartbeat during chaos, like clarity in a world full of noise. Women gravitate toward that energy because it allows them to exhale. When a woman encounters true peace in someone's presence, she feels her nervous system relax. She doesn't have to decode mixed signals, anticipate emotional outbursts, or worry about hidden motives. She experiences consistency instead of unpredictability. This stability is deeply attractive because it removes the emotional labor she often carries in relationships. Peace gives her space to be feminine, expressive, and open without fear of judgment or conflict. Peace shows emotional maturity. It shows someone who understands the value of calm communication over arguments, understanding over ego, and presence over pressure. A peaceful energy doesn't mean avoiding conflict. It means handling conflict with clarity and balance. Someone who can stay composed during difficult moments signals strength, not the loud, aggressive kind, but the inner strength that makes a woman feel supported rather than threatened. Peace also represents emotional safety. A woman blooms where she feels safe, not where she feels controlled or criticized. When someone brings peace, she feels her emotions are allowed, her voice is heard, and her boundaries are protected. She doesn't feel rushed or forced. She doesn't feel like she has to shrink to avoid confrontation. Peace gives her the confidence to show her authentic self, and authenticity deepens attraction. Another reason peace is so magnetic is because it reflects self-control. Someone who can manage their own emotions doesn't place that responsibility on others. They don't create unnecessary drama, react impulsively, or use manipulation as a tool. They offer predictability, not boring predictability, but emotional reliability. This reliability is deeply attractive because it tells a woman, you won't have to carry both your emotions and mine. That reassurance makes her feel deeply connected. Peace also reveals confidence. Someone who is confident in themselves doesn't need to assert dominance, win every argument, or prove their worth through force. Their calmness comes from knowing who they are. That kind of confidence is magnetic because it creates emotional harmony rather than tension. It invites closeness rather than resistance. Peace enhances emotional intimacy. When someone brings calm energy into her life, she becomes more open, more trusting, and more affectionate. She can connect on a deeper level because she isn't guarding herself. She knows she won't be punished for honesty or rejected for vulnerability. Peace allows the relationship to grow organically, without fear or pressure. Peace is the ultimate attraction because it creates the environment where love can thrive. It's the feeling of being understood, respected, and valued without chaos. It's the quiet presence that softens her heart, the stability that helps her relax, and the emotional clarity that makes her want to stay. Peace pulls her in not with force, but with the kind of steady, grounding energy that makes her feel at home. In the end, a woman doesn't open her heart to control, pressure, or force. She opens it to emotional safety. She is drawn to presence, not possession, to confidence, not dominance, to freedom, not restraint. What pulls her in is not someone trying to shape her, but someone who has shaped themselves. The qualities that attract her most, self-mastery, respect, peace, confidence, non-attachment, emotional maturity, are all expressions of inner strength, not outward control. She notices the energy that lets her breathe, the presence that understands boundaries, the calm that steadies her spirit, and the freedom that allows her to remain herself. When connection grows in an environment of trust and emotional intelligence, it stops being a transaction and becomes a bond. A woman naturally moves towards the place where her heart feels respected and her soul feels safe. That is the quiet truth. The person who never tries to control her becomes the one she trusts, values, and chooses, because peace, authenticity, and inner strength are the real forces that draw the feminine heart closer.